I do wonder though if they are going to regret not maybe putting the final nail into this game ahead of the second leg, because now they have to worry about this game, and we all know what's on Saturday, right? Bayern Munich have an incredible opportunity here to end the Bundesliga title race on Saturday, right? I personally think it's probably already over, but there is absolute no doubting who's going to win the Meisterschale on if Bayern Munich win on Saturday, right? There's just no way Leverkusen come back from that deficit. And so, you could sense in some of the selection in the squad that Kompany had that game in his head, right? I think that is why, for example, Eric Dyer is starting, right? Goretzka is starting as well. Guerrero and left back. Okay, who else do you have there? And Guerrero looked really bad in that Kane goal that was disallowed, right? He was almost non-existent there. And I also actually think it is kind of shame that goal got ruled offside because two players that didn't even touch the ball got involved in the play. The laws are the laws of the game. It's hard to argue with that, but I do think that is something to look at. And so you get the sense that the company had the game on Saturday in mind, that a lot of the team had the game on Saturday in mind, and that's why they may took the foot off the pedal. But now they have to actually worry about the return match as well, which is next Tuesday. Comes in quick succession, right? Saturday, Tuesday. That's a lot of football in a very short time. And there's some good news, I guess, that Ito is back faster than a lot of people anticipated that he would be coming back. And I think he is needed because he can play left back, and he's definitely an upgrade on any fit player currently in that Bayern squad who can play left back. So I think that maybe makes an impact. But you know what? Like at the end of the day, I feel like maybe they missed a little bit of an opportunity here to end this tie before the second leg even kicks off.
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of it was interesting how it played out because, in hindsight, I now think this is probably exactly how Bayern set up against Aston Villa. It's just that Aston Villa obviously have better players than Celtic. They can counter-attack better.
Yep.
They've got more pace. They've got more, combative. They've just got a better squad, straight, plain and simple. And Aston Villa were able to kind of get over the top. And to an extent, Celtic did eventually break through against Bayern. And I mean, if you look at the way that Bayern set up, they basically had a really high press where they really limited Celtic's ability to pass out to that kind of front four of Maeda, Ida, Kuhn and Hatate, who was kind of playing zero attacking midfielder. And they limited Celtic to, passing it around their own team. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is that they were quite selective in who they closed down. And for a team that really played a really high, aggressive press, they actually let Celtic have the ball quite a lot in the middle of the park. So, for example, the Celtic holding midfielder, Cal McGregor, I thought he had the ball quite a lot in this game, which is actually quite surprising if you think about it, in the sense that if a better team are pressing a poor team, the one player who should be hassled throughout the match is that poor team's central midfielder. He just wasn't. And, I don't want to keep going back to Harry Kane because it feels like we're beginning to kind of build up this kind of reputation for hating on the guy. But I think it does kind of show the limitations of playing that high press if you have someone like Harry Kane up there, because he's not going to spend 90 minutes chasing, Cal McGregor around the pitch. And that means that high press that Vincent Kompany wants to play has its limitations, because Celtic will always be able to beat the press because there's nobody sitting on Cal McGregor. That's maybe why Kompany opted for someone like Goretzka over Pavlovic, because Goretzka could run back and forth. He's happy to sprint 40 yards here, 40 yards there. He can, when he's in peak fitness, cover two players at once at times. He's obviously a very physical guy. He gallops around the pitch. But I just found that quite interesting, and it did remind me of that Aston Villa game where obviously Bayern tried to do something similar, and Villa were able to break the press, and then obviously it happened against Barcelona as well to a much worse degree. And it's just interesting to note at this point of Champions League, because it was a win. I think everyone probably expects Bayern Munich to probably go on and win the second leg relatively comfortably. But it's just a little chink in the armour that I've noticed at this point in Vincent Kompany's tactics, which has been exploited tonight, not to a huge degree, but it has been exploited and was exploited by other teams in the Champions League so far. And as we look ahead to that Leverkusen game, it is really interesting if Xabi Alonso's watching this game and thinking, Bayern have Guerrero and Konrad Leimer, who are happy to run around the pit, run around the wings all day long. Olise, I think, and Leroy Sané both put in really selfless performances where they were tracking their fullbacks and running back and covering the runners. Kimmich and Goretzka are very industrious in the middle of the pitch. And to be fair, Harry Kane does kind of drop deep and he sets up plays. He had a great number of 1-2s with Musiala, for example, in attack. But off the ball, he leaves that kind of gap for other teams to kind of get a breather and avoid the overall high press. And I think that's just something to maybe note from this game. I said after the game that, Bayern won the game, but there are a few warnings to heed ahead of the second leg and perhaps further afield after that, if we can be so presumptuous, who they might be playing next. Because after Celtic, it will be the big guns that they come up against in the next round. I don't know. It's just interesting to watch. I guess at the end of the day, you can only beat the teams in front of you, and maybe Bayern will raise their game against better teams. But that's just something that I noticed tonight, I think.
Well, we've seen it against a few Bundesliga teams as well, right? It's not the opponent on Saturday, it's the opponent the weekend after. Eintracht Frankfurt have done this as well at the Allianz, right? That's 3-3 draw comes to mind. Yeah, I think there's a lot to consider here.